Despite its low power, my favorite console of the last two console generations was the Nintendo Switch. Don't get me wrong, I love my PlayStation 5 and I turn my Xbox on sometimes, but the Nintendo Switch is where it's at. It's not even because of the portability or anything like that, because I'm not personally a big guy on that. But just the identity of the system and just the options of being able to play games on a device like this, it's just really cool. And not to mention Nintendo's exclusive library of games, like even at Sony and Microsoft's best, they just have nothing on Nintendo's first party lineup. But there was one thing holding the console back, why I personally couldn't recommend the system to literally everyone on the planet, and that was because of its power. As well as cool as the Nintendo Switch is, it is severely underpowered compared to the other two consoles, even when we were in the PS4 and Xbox One generation. So when talking about what consoles you should get, I always thought that, well, you have to get a Switch and a PS5 if you want to play a lot of the games that come out. If you were interested in just Nintendo games, then it's fine, but if you are at all interested in third party, you have to make sure to get another console to play those games. But now with this, I don't think so anymore, because now with the power of the Nintendo Switch 2, I don't think it's going to necessarily have that problem. Sure, it still is underpowered compared to the competition, but I don't think the gap is as dramatic anymore. So with this review of this system, I aim to answer the question of whether this console is a worthwhile upgrade to the Switch 1, and whether the sacrifices with it are as drastic as the Switch 1 to the PS4 and PS5 generation. And of course, with that sacrifice, we also have to talk about the pricing controversy with the system. But I want to go in with a more so open mind and work up to that. So with that, let's just shut up and dig in. Unboxing the system, and as you can see here, I have the bundle that comes with Mario Kart World because I ain't paying $80 for no game. This is a very tight package, like very tight. Comparing this to the Switch 1 box, both the Joy-Cons and the Nintendo Switch itself had a lot of room to breathe, but here the Switch 2 is taking up half the box. Plus the Joy-Cons have to be slanted at an angle just to fit them in. It's nuts how tight this packaging is, but I think this is actually a good thing, as tighter packaging leads to less packaging, thus saving on the waste. Not bad, Nintendo. You know, for someone that really likes to price gouge its consumers, you sure do care about the dolphins an awful lot. Picking up both the Joy-Cons and the tablet itself, not only are they absolutely huge, but they seem to have an awful lot of weight and heft to them, which was really cool to see and feel. And it was really weird to feel the SL and SR buttons being cold to the touch, having a very metallic feel. Speaking of metal, the Switch 2 also features magnets for the Joy-Con instead of the railing system from the Switch 1, which makes the Joy-Cons feel way more secure. It makes it feel really snappy, and makes a very satisfying clacking sound when you put them into the system. All around, the system feels incredible to hold, and everything here just feels way more premium and much nicer feeling compared to the older Switch. The cartridge was really weird compared to the Switch 1, where you push up the door from the front. The Switch 2, you pull up the cartridge door from the back and there's little latches holding it in place. It was really weird, but I quickly got used to it, though it did make me feel like an idiot for a little bit. The Switch 2 dock is also an improvement over the original. The Switch 2 dock has rounded curves making it look nicer, though like the cartridge slot, the door for the back of the system was also weird, as you have to lift up the entire back plate of the system, and there was no arrow or anything, so it also took me a second to figure it out, and I was scared I was gonna break it. But despite those small nitpicks, as I said, I think the system is very much an improvement over the original Switch in pretty much every regard. For someone with big hands like mine, the system just melted into my hands and felt a lot better, though I feel like those with smaller hands could find the system is too big, but I can't really speak for that. The screen on the system is absolutely outstanding, as the screen feels less faded than the OG Switch and the colors are a lot more vibrant. Plus the fact that the system has an HDR screen is also very nice. I also picked up the Switch 2 Pro controller. I originally wasn't going to, as previous Nintendo Switch Pro controllers are compatible, but I had the money to burn, so I decided, hey, why not? Until I saw the total was a bit more than I estimated in my head and I about pooped my pants. But disregarding that, the Switch 2 Pro controller was way more of an improvement over the original than I thought. First of all, the D-pad is actually a D-pad, but not only that, the controller sticks have really soft edges, making the analog sticks much softer and nice to flick them around. The buttons too also feel very soft and very satisfying to press repeatedly. The whole controller in of itself just feels like it was made from more premium materials, and it feels great to hold. A lot more than I thought. It's still way too expensive though, and I really wish they had a more cheaper option. Thankfully though, I didn't buy any other accessories, but I do want to give a special shout out to COOWPS, I think that's how you pronounce it, for sending me their slick carrying case, which comes at half the cost of the official Nintendo one. $40 for a case is pretty ridiculous. This one is not only at a good price, but is slick and is very sturdy. If you'd like this Nintendo Switch 2 case for your Nintendo Switch 2, check out my affiliate link in the description or on screen now. Not only will you be getting a pretty cool case, but you'll be supporting me as well. Booting up the system, unfortunately the system's home menu is pretty much exactly the same as the original Switch, but with a few things that are kinda cool and make it a bit more distinct, but not by much. The system home menu is still very much boring and lacks character a lot. I still really miss the days of the Wii console home menu, and even the Wii U console menu beats this by an absolute mile. Thankfully, the Eshop actually works on this thing though. Still no music, but everything is laid out way sleeker and nicer, and even gives you more game recommendations based on what your friends are playing, which is very nice. The big new Switch 2 feature is Gamechat. Yep. It sure is Gamechat.
5 pennies, big boy, I'm gonna oil you up and make you twerk.
It really is weird how Nintendo marketed this so much, like it was this big new feature when not only has Xbox and PlayStation had this for years, but Nintendo's is literally just Discord. But it's cool to have regardless, I suppose. The best thing about Gamechat though is game share, which is basically just Parsec. For certain games, not only can you game share with people locally with Switch 1 users included, but you can also do it online, giving certain games online play. Plus it's even better than Parsec, because depending on the game, players get their own screen, not just a mirrored screen of the host. So for Clubhouse Games, for example, the checkerboard is actually flipped on the other user's screen, which is a really cool level of polish. I tested this with my friend Xpool, who didn't have the greatest internet connection at some points during testing, but when he did have a solid connection at his other house, it ran completely fine. I do hope a lot of games use this feature. I hope to see LEGO games use this, since they won't put in online multiplayer for some reason. At least put in game share, now that would be epic. But now let's finally look at the games for the Nintendo Switch 2. Let's see what the launch of the system has to say about the future of this console. The launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 is honestly quite a bit underwhelming. It's mostly just a lot of ports with only 2 new games straight from Nintendo. I feel like Nintendo delved a little bit too much into just ports, as there are only 2 new Nintendo games at launch, with the rest being ports or extended re-releases. I think Nintendo just really wanted to flex how powerful the Switch 2 is, which I think is important given the Switch 1, but I think they should have had at least Donkey Kong as well available at launch, just to give us some new titles. However, if you are strictly a Nintendo Switch user, a lot of this is very new to you, so I guess it kinda balances out. But before we get into the third party, let's see what Nintendo had to offer for the launch of their system. And let's start with the only one anyone cares about. Oh, Mario Kart World. I have a lot of things to say about you. Thankfully, one of the things that I can say is I did not pay $80 for it, which I need to make absolutely clear. If Mario Kart World was not included in this bundle, this whole video would not exist. No, I ain't paying $80 for this. But who knows? Maybe it'll turn out to be worth it. It's not. Yeah, not even gonna play a bit here. Mario Kart World, I think, is a great game, and it's nice to finally get a new Mario Kart game after 11 years, and one that's extremely ambitious and cool. But given the price point, you would think that this ambition would be well realized and be extremely fun and practical. I mean, an open world Mario Kart, that sounds awesome on paper, but once you play it, it's not. Honestly, the more I think about the world part of Mario Kart World, the more it pisses me off. Of all game franchises that have to go open world nowadays, why Mario Kart? And more so, why is the open world extremely empty and boring? For how much this open world was showed off in the marketing, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people missed it, as it's just a button here in the bottom right. Like, it doesn't really feel like the open world is part of the game. It's just a thing they just threw in because, well, we put a lot of work into connecting all these courses together, might as well let the player free roam it, why not? But the world aspect of the game doesn't really make the game better. In fact, I feel it makes the game overall worse. Yeah, driving to the next course and having all the courses connected sounds really cool and is pretty cool the first couple times you do it, but then you realize that the connecting courses are just the empty open world and it just feels like filler. Not to mention for the Grand Prix, you don't do 3 laps of a course once you get there. Your multiple laps is the connected course. Why is it like this? Why can't I play 3 laps of a course once I play the connecting route? Why is that not even an option? The only way to play the game like a traditional Mario Kart is through the versus mode, so you basically have to make your own Grand Prix. Also, this roster is probably one of the worst rosters in a Mario Kart game. I wouldn't say this hits the level of Mario Kart 7's roster or Mario Kart DS's roster, but this roster is bloated with actual nonsense. Yeah, sure, you have a lot of the main characters you could want, like Mario, Luigi, Toad, Rosalina, Birdo, etc, 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 but there are a lot of notable characters that are just missing. No Diddy Kong, no Dry Bowser, and not even Petey Piranha. And weirdly enough, there are no new characters based off new Mario games. No, this roster is absolutely choked with filler characters. And listen, I love me some Why the Heck characters, but I also have standards. I love Why the Heck characters if they have some goofy personality to them, like Goomba, that's kinda cool, and this ostrich, Conkter? But there are some characters that just have absolutely no defining features at all. Like yeah, I'll give you the penguin from Super Mario 64 as she kinda had enough of a character to justify its inclusion, and honestly I'm a little surprised they weren't here sooner, but that is just a crab. There's no personality, it's not really funny enough to be goofy, that is just a crab. Oh, and by the way, did you know that Fishbone was in the game? Who's Fishbone, you may ask? What, you don't recognize the name of the dead fish? But you know what? Goofy characters, even the useless ones, I can stand for that. What I can't stand for are the outfits you can unlock throughout the game, which are really cool costumes, I'll add, but all the outfits are separate characters on the roster, bloating the character selection even more. I cannot believe this is still a thing that we're dealing with. Like, this has been a criticism of the series for a while, and they just refuse to apply that criticism. And in return, it makes a bloated roster even more bloated. So I'm saying all this, and you're probably like, huh, so I guess you don't like it. Bet your buyer's remorse is kicking in. Haha, what a loser. No, I still like Mario Kart World. I like it a lot, actually. It's just that it has some of the worst things about the series and even invents new things that I absolutely hate. But for everything Mario Kart World doesn't do or fails at with the open world, it does add a lot more to the overall experience of Mario Kart. First of all, I mean graphically, like holy moly, are you seeing this? Nintendo always knocks it out of the park with their launch titles, bro. Mario Kart World is so pretty, and in my opinion, even prettier than most games even on more powerful hardware. But along with the beautiful environments, the characters of Mario Kart feel more alive than ever. The roster has been slightly tweaked, taking cues from Super Mario Wonder before it and giving the characters more expressive designs and animations. For some reason in Mario Kart 8, Mario always looks so pissed off in his character selection, but here, look at my little man, he's just here having a good time. And the animations for all the characters just have a lot of squash and stretch to them, giving a lot more of a cartoony flair. It's so wild to me that I thought that Mario Kart 8 was the most beautiful the series could get, but Mario Kart World makes you see a lot more of the imperfections of it and absolutely blows that game out of the water with charm and personality. And look, the open world may be pointless and boring, but the actual courses aren't. They're pretty great. One of my favorites as soon as I saw it in the trailer, and I knew it was going to stay one of my favorites, is Boo Cinema. I love it when the tracks give off their own vibe, and Boo Cinema is excellent, giving this old-timey horror movie experience. DK Spaceport, where you race on top of the construction beams from the original Donkey Kong arcade game, like that's so cool! Salty Salty Speedway is also a really cool one, though I'm not a fan of the Birdo mermaid statue. Starview Peak is an absolutely stunning course. Like, look at this water, bro, look at this water! And again, I may not like the open world, but Knockout Tour is really fun. Like, yeah, if you're gonna connect all these tracks together, you might as well introduce a mode that has you drive through all of them, and it works like a battle royale where you have to fight to stay in the game. As the further you get into the course, the more ahead of the game you gotta stay. It's not great in CPU matches because they're CPUs, but in a full lobby of online players, it is chaos and it is great. Mario Kart World is the most heated and critical I've ever gotten over a good game that I actually like. For everything I don't like about Mario Kart World from a fundamental standpoint, and I think the price is absolutely ridiculous, like the game does not prove its worth at all, Mario Kart World does something I really like that it kind of makes me forgive it. I would be a lot more upset if I paid full price for this game, which thankfully I didn't, and if this game does interest you, please, for all that is good, go for the bundle. I don't even think it's worth $70, which to be fair, no game is, but I'm talking about compared to other $70 games. If the open world is their justification for the $80 price point, then it is a terrible justification. Enough said. But if you get the bundle, and you get it for $50 along with your console that you also wanted, and you have some friends either locally or online, you're in for a good time. Unlike Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, arguably, this is a bigger scam than Mario Kart. No, I'm dead serious. I think this game is actually terrible. On the surface, it's a cute way to show the features of the Switch 2, with cool little mini games based around each feature of the Nintendo Switch 2's tech. The problem lies in that you need $95 worth of accessories in order to complete the experience. But that's not even the worst bit. To even play a lot of the game in the first place, you need a TV that is capable of both 4K and/or 120 Hz. If you don't, you are physically locked out from being able to experience most of the game, which I get it. It's pushing the limits and wanting to show you all this stuff, but the fact that they are charging money for a game that you cannot play without the correct equipment and $95 worth of accessories in order to 100% complete it is absolutely ludicrous. Why is the Joy-Con wheel an exhibit? No one's buying Joy-Con wheels, Nintendo! And also, the style of this game is absolutely boring. In Wii Sports, it was a tech demo, but it was fun. It had these classic Miis that were brimming with personality. This is just a corporate press convention with these static characters. I was half expecting them to use that corporate friendly character art style. Yeah, you know the one, that one. Why are your legs so much bigger than the rest of your body? Why is your head so small? This is one of the worst things I've ever bought. Like, honestly, I think I would have rather paid $80 for Mario Kart World. I'm dead serious. This is absolutely pathetic. This is why I believe Reggie when he said he had to literally campaign to get Wii Sports included with the system as a pack-in, because there would have been no way Reggie would have let this happen. I hate you, Doug Bowser. Why did you hire the villain? Oh man, this is... dang, I need to play some good Nintendo games to wash all this out. So before we talk about the third parties on the Switch 2, let's go back and talk about Switch 1 titles for a little bit. First off, a good amount of Switch 1 games were released as Nintendo Switch Edition. That comes with extra content, and actually kind of cool, the game works on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. Kinda unnecessary, but I think it's cool that it does this. What I do not think is cool, however, is again, these prices. So here's the thing. These Nintendo Switch 2 editions usually come with extra content in the game. Soon we're going to get Mario Party Jamboree with additional minigames using the Nintendo Switch 2's tech. So basically, it comes with DLC. But they add a $10 to $20 upgrade on top of the full game's price. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example, is $80. I love Kirby and the Forgotten Land, don't get me wrong, but in no way should the game be $80 standard. I wish they just had the DLC separate, so if you just want to get the game for its Switch 2 features, you could get that for free and then fork over the extra $20 for the DLC. But even if they wanted to go this route, why not just have the game at its original price point if you have to buy it brand new? These are old games after all, so having an upgrade path for existing consumers is whatever, but for brand new customers, they shouldn't have to pay more, especially if all they want is to just play the original game. Not to mention, Breath of the Wild Switch 2 version comes with basically nothing. It comes with the feature you can use in the mobile app that just adds Zelda voice lines for an extra $10 for no reason. This is just Nintendo scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to figure out something to add, because they knew they would get a lot of revenue for both of these games, so they just had to shoehorn in something so they could sell an upgrade pack. Honestly, if you don't have these games, I recommend just buying these games for hopefully $30 to $40 used on eBay, and then purchasing the upgrade pack, because all of this is just flat out horrendous. Thankfully, it's not all bad, as Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom with the unnecessary upgrade, it does look beautiful in this high resolution and at this smooth frame rate. Notably, while we're talking about Zelda, Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom were both updated to run the game at full performance, as on the Switch 1, the performance was almost unplayable at certain parts. Other games also support Game Share, which as we discussed earlier, is also a great thing. But notably, some games are actually running better on the Switch 2 without any updates at all. Batman Arkham Knight, a game infamous for running at like sub 20 FPS, especially in the Batmobile, now runs in a solid 30 FPS now. Doesn't excuse it running that way in the first place, and the resolution is still dirt, but it's pretty cool this is happening. I hope to see further games see further updates and improvements. And a lot of people are going through the Switch 1 library to see how the Switch 2 affects them, and I think this will be very interesting to see the results. But now let's officially get off both Nintendo and Switch 1 stuff, and let's take a look at the third-party support on Nintendo Switch 2. Before we talk about that though, let's talk about the biggest contributor to e-waste I think I've ever seen. You see, there are only two types of Nintendo Switch 2 game cartridges. Regular game cards that hold 64 gigabytes of data, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition cartridges, which I think are the same thing but work on both Switch 1 and 2, and game key cards. Game key cards are exactly like those PS5 and Xbox games, where there's no data on the disc and it just unlocks a digital copy of the game. However, while on those consoles the issue isn't too big all things considered, Switch 2 game key cards are basically every third-party game. This is purely Nintendo's fault for not supplying any other option for these publishers, as I kinda get it from these companies' perspective, as a 64GB cartridge is way more expensive compared to the options publishers had on Switch 1. Like Sonic X Shadow Generations, for example, is 24 gigabytes, and not to mention Puyo Puyo Tetris 2’s is 4 gigabytes. At that point, from their perspective, you might as well just use a game key card rather than spending so much extra money on a card. But then there are other games like Yakuza 0, which come at a whopping 47 gigabytes, and it's like, couldn't you spring for an actual cartridge at that point? There's so much data I gotta download, man! I will say this is better than the code in the box, which we were plagued with on Switch 1, as these aren't locked to your account. Therefore, you can sell them or give them to a friend. But I just view this as e-waste, as whenever the Switch 2 servers eventually shut off, or an internet apocalypse happens or something, all of these cartridges are absolutely useless because you can't download the game later down the line. Not only is this bad for preservation, but this is literally just waste. Most of the third-party games I got, I didn't even bother going the game key route because I have to download the game anyway, and digital is more convenient, so why not just download the game and not have this e-waste lying around? But anyway, we'll come to a verdict about this later. Let's talk about the third-party support on the Switch itself, the actual games. Now you see, as much as I was excited to try out Mario Kart World, a big thing, like I said before, I was looking forward to was the third-party lineup of the Switch 2. Because with the newfound power of the Switch 2, I want to see how the system handles what the third parties throw out. What would be the compromises? And also, there are a few third-party games I bought that I really wanted to try out for myself, and since I want to play a bunch of games on Switch 2, now's the best excuse to try them out. Starting with one that I know you're the most curious about, and actually might be more of the reason that people are buying the system, even over Mario Kart World. Cyberpunk 2077. Wait, how is this not setting my Switch on fire? Cyberpunk 2077, a game infamously not able to run on PS4 but was shoved on it anyway, was abandoned with the Phantom Liberty expansion, and yet the whole game, including the Phantom Liberty expansion, is on a Nintendo console in a tiny little cartridge. And yes, by the way, it's all on the cartridge. This isn't no game key card thing. All of the game is on here, including the Phantom Liberty expansion. No day one update, nothing. This is nuts. The cartridge isn't in here though, it's in the Switch. I'm sorry, I lied to you. Cyberpunk 2077 looks and runs beautifully on Nintendo Switch 2. My footage doesn't do it nearly enough justice. I swear, I showed this game to a friend of mine on a Discord screen share and he was absolutely blown away. Now yes, the frame rate isn't 40 frames per second, but I'm gonna be so for real. I played the game on PS5 and I can't really tell the difference. I'm gonna be so for real. This is dock mode, but in handheld mode, it also looks incredible in the smaller form factor. And while there is a performance mode where you can run the game in a lower quality to achieve 40 frames per second, it's not really a noticeable difference, so I personally keep the game at quality mode. This is the highlight of the Nintendo Switch 2's launch 100%, and reminder, this is just a port. The fact that they did all this without creating the base game with the Switch 2 in mind is actually crazy. This is the gold standard for the Switch 2, absolutely. So let's see how the other companies fared out. Street Fighter 6 was another game I picked up, which, by the way, I'm sorry for the gameplay being displayed here. I'm very terrible at fighting games, so if you cringe at the sight of my play, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's great too. Looking up comparisons online, there are some very slight differences, but that's all they are, slight. The game looks incredible and runs in the same frame rate as all the other versions with no dips at all. Street Fighter 6 is also a great game, by the way. This is my first time playing it, and while I'm terrible at it, it is loads of fun to play. There's this battle up area where you can interact with other players and play online, and there's even little arcade games of other games you can play while you're waiting for a match. Plus, in World Tour mode, it also has an open hub type setup where you can start a fight and people from the background come over and watch the fight. Really adds to the style the game is going for. Plus, this game doesn't break the bank either, as it's only $60 for the whole package. And there's even a base version of the game you can get for $40 if you're just wanting to try it out. But either way, Street Fighter 6 is another great example for Switch 2. I could see people preferring this version over the rest, as fighting games on portable consoles go together like bread and butter. Alright, let's talk about Sega's contributions for the Switch 2 launch, and it's quite disappointing. Sega released 3 games on the Nintendo Switch 2, with Yakuza 0 Director's Cut being a game that wasn't on Switch 1. And while the port does run great and include extra content, $50 for a game you can get really cheap on other platforms is kind of steep. But if you're a fan of the Yakuza, def go for this port, as I think it's the best version of the game with its extra content and looking slightly better than the PS4 version. Now, Sega's other 2 games I have a bit of a problem with, as unlike Yakuza 0, Sonic X Shadow Generations and Puyo Puyo Tetris 2’s are on the Switch 1, and there is absolutely no upgrade path for either of these games. Sonic X Shadow Generations is one thing, but this is Puyo Puyo Tetris. What do they upgrade, making the PNG slightly shinier? I do love me some Puyo Puyo Tetris too, so I was unfortunately sucked into buying this version because I had the money for it, so I could tell you not to get this version at full price because this is horrible. You can't even transfer your save data over, meaning you have to unlock Cowboy S again.
Wanna play with me?
But removing the lack of an upgrade path, are there any upgrades or changes? Well, I will say the game does look better. Yeah, I actually said that, because while the Switch 1 version looked fine, obviously, there was a bit of a difference when switching over from it to the PS5 version. It's still Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, so not like it matters, but if that bothered you, well, here you go. The game also includes mouse controls, but I don't really like them. Maybe somebody does, but I don't. But the big feature of Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 S is the doubles mode, and it's don't you plug? I had a blind piece.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You just put the line piece down.
Don't. Oh, well, now he's gonna put. I'm getting lightheaded.
I think the line piece would have been
fantastic. Both your player's pieces or Puyos have collisions, so while you're trying to play the game, you constantly keep getting in each other's way and leads to hilarious results, especially when playing with a bot, because you just keep getting mad at the bot for playing so poorly. It's great. Not worth getting this version specifically though. However, if you do not have Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, wait for a sale still. This game is $40 base, and while I guess it's not horrible, you know, it could be a lot worse, $40 is still a pretty steep price for freaking Puyo Puyo Tetris. And the fact that they don't include an upgrade path for the game is actually insulting. Seriously, Sega, what is with you recently? Get it together. Now for Sonic X Shadow, a game we covered here on the channel already, Sonic X Shadow Generations is basically Sonic's versions of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, where inside is a remaster of Sonic Generations, that's right, without the time stones. Also also featuring an expansion focused around our favorite edgy McEdgeface Shadow the Hedgehog. And I gotta be honest, this version is really disappointing. There's nothing inherently wrong with this version. It's fine, it functions, and there's no frame drops or anything, but I mean, look at the difference here between versions. I still understand that the Switch 2 isn't as powerful as the PS5, but I feel like something like Shadow Generations, given what we saw with Cyberpunk, should run better even in performance mode. Again, the version isn't terrible. If this is your first time playing the game in general, then it's fine, great even. But there is a slight sacrifice between both versions that I don't feel is necessary. In handheld mode, I actually think the game looks better with the smaller form factor, but I still think the port is lacking overall. I feel like this isn't really the Switch 2 hardware, however, as like I said, Cyberpunk 2077 shows this console is very much a capable machine. I just feel like Sega may have rushed this version out to meet the launch and just got it running well enough without taking the extra time to optimize it to the best of its ability. Of course, this goes for Shadow Generations only. Sonic Generations is literally perfect, no problems at all. Runs on a high resolution, don't know quite the specific resolution, and it runs in 60 FPS completely smoothly. But even though this port is disappointing, I would gladly still play the game like this if I really wanted to, at least fully in handheld mode. Like, if I really wanted to play the game on Switch 2 as opposed to any other platform, it's still a decent version, though I do hope to see better versions of Sonic games on the Switch 2 going forward. I think the true test will be Sonic Racing Crossworlds, or if that turns out to be a rushed version like Sonic X Shadow, then Sonic Frontiers 2, which should be made more with the Switch 2 in mind. Speaking of racing games, we got another fast game just like Fast RMX at the Switch 1's launch, and this is a great follow-up to that game, and just like it, it's only $15, so you might as well pick it up. It's kind of cool because it kind of gives off this futuristic vibe, which I think fits a console launch pretty well. I will say that the game did launch in the lowest possible version for some reason, even though it's for 120 FPS, which my capture card isn't capable of capturing. But thankfully, the quality mode still runs at 60 FPS just fine and is a beautiful game, especially for $15. I kind of have to talk about Fortnite next because I know people are curious, including myself, because I've been kind of having an addiction lately. But while Fortnite runs fine, it is a little weird as your character seems to be in kind of low quality, while everything else seems absolutely fine. So if you want to play Fortnite on Nintendo Switch 2, it works, though I hope it stays that way, as it felt like Epic Games just kind of gave up on the Switch 1 version a couple years after it came out. But for now, it's great. Well, that's all the third-party games I tried out at launch that I was interested in, and I think it really shows the potential for third-party support on this console. But before we get to the verdict, I do want to talk about a couple more things before we wrap up here, as the most exciting thing about the Switch 2 from Nintendo's lineup is the GameCube games as a part of NSO, which comes with 3 games: Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, and Soul Calibur, which does include Link as a fighter, which is really cool. All these games ran great, except there is very noticeable input lag on Wind Waker, and it's like insanely noticeable. Not unplayable, like I feel like I could get used to it if I played it for a while, but it should not be here in the first place if it wasn't in the original game. But really, I'm just so excited about getting a bunch of GameCube games periodically throughout the Switch 2's life. I think that'll be really exciting with someone who has the Switch 2 at launch. Now, there's one more game that I want to talk about before I wrap this video up: Deltarune. I've always had a connection to Undertale, but for some reason, I just never really played it until now, and oh my god did I miss out. Undertale is one of my favorite games of all time now. It's a game where I don't really have any major criticisms with it. I love the world of Undertale, the amazing characters, the soundtrack. Oh, the soundtrack! One moment it's sentimental and sweet, the next moment it goes so freaking hard! The best thing that Nintendo Switch 2 did is finally getting me to play Undertale, as I'm not sure if I would have played it if I wasn't making this video and knowing I had to talk about Deltarune. Which, by the way, can we talk about how cool this is? That Toby Fox is known for his work on modding Earthbound gets to be a part of the Nintendo Switch 2's launch and be a big part of the hype. I just think that's really cool. I wish Nintendo was this cool more often. Anyway, I gotta be honest, because of how much I absolutely loved Undertale, I was going into Deltarune with pretty damn high expectations, and honestly, there were a few concerns where I wasn't sure if it would live up to it. The fact that the game apparently only had one ending rather than the 7 billion that Undertale had was definitely a bit odd, and I was concerned that it wouldn't have hit the same. I was wrong. Deltarune is my favorite game I have played so far on the Switch 2. Deltarune is absolutely incredible, and at least for right now, better than Undertale. I don't want to talk about the story too much as I kind of want to leave spoilers open, but the story flip-flops between absolutely ridiculous and then insanely emotional at the exact same time. The characters of Deltarune I feel are actually better written than Undertale. There's more of them to boot, as with Undertale you didn't have a party, it was basically just you, but here you got the trio of Chris, Susie, and Ralze along with more and more recurring characters that you grow more and more attached to. The gameplay here is also more fleshed out and more like a traditional RPG, though with more involvement, which is what I really like about it. Not only is having a party great because you can really strategize sparing multiple enemies in one turn, but I also like the TP mechanic, where if you have your soul just close enough to an attack, you can raise your TP, which led to a very addicting and satisfying mechanic. God, I want to talk about Deltarune more, but I gotta wrap this video up. But in summary, please go play Deltarune. You don't necessarily have to have played Undertale, but it's better if you do. And if we want to talk about how $80 games are bullshit, this game is $25. Granted, it's not finished yet as it's only on chapter 4 of 7, but being a part of the hype of this game and experiencing the new chapters is the best part. So please, go give it a shot, especially if you have a Switch 2. If you have a Switch 2, you are obligated to play this game. I'm totally not threatening you, but yeah, those are my full thoughts on the Switch 2 and a lot of the games that came at launch. Speaking purely on the console and not anything else surrounding it, I think this is an amazing console and probably the best Nintendo console ever. Yes, the Wii and Wii U have the better identity in terms of its menus and stuff like that, but being able to play games like Cyberpunk on a Nintendo console and a console as small as this is absolutely wild as a longtime Nintendo fan. And seeing the prospect of the scope that Nintendo can do with its major franchises is incredibly exciting. And honestly, I think $450, while not an amazing price point, is a pretty good value for the power you're getting. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about the negatives that this console brings that could very well change the audience of video games in its entirety. As much as I absolutely love this console, I'm very concerned about how much I'll be able to use it in the future with the current state of the video game industry. Mario Kart World's price of $80 sets a bad precedent for how expensive and inaccessible gaming is about to become if we continue to go down this path. With Xbox already following suit charging $80 for its games, and other game publishers, while not charging $80 standards for their games, are getting a little too comfortable with their $70 price tags and additional DLC practices. I honestly don't know what the future of the industry is about to become, because $80 for a video game for a lot of casual audiences is absolutely ridiculous, meaning that I see a lot of people phasing out of gaming, or at least the AAA side. And honestly, maybe these companies are okay with that? I could honestly see AAA gaming going in a similar direction to Lego sets, where the prices are so much higher that it becomes a huge barrier to entry for casual audiences. I could honestly see games going in a similar direction, where the casual audience might be phased out and either phase out of gaming entirely or fully move over to indie games. That's right, eliminate the middle class, brokies aren't allowed! But I could also see that maybe $80 games could sell for a little bit, but then as it gradually falls, it could absolutely bomb the industry. I don't know, and honestly, I don't know which outcome is better. What I do know is, no matter what happens, video game developers still won't get paid. I love talking about the video game industry, it is so great to talk about. But either way, when talking about the Switch 2 by itself, without all these outside factors, the Switch 2 is a really great console. And if you think it's at all interesting, get it and have your fun with it before the game industry either phases you out or crashes and burns in flames. This video had a very bittersweet ending, but you know, that's just how it is, I guess. But what do you think about the Switch 2 and its games? Do you think the console is great, or is it overhyped? And where do you see yourself with gaming in the future? Let me know down in the comments below. See you next time, and thanks for watching.